I think kids feel stable when they see their parents loving each other. And so if the time that we're spending together is arguing and they're listening through the vents.
They've heard plenty of arguing, by the way. Our kids have heard a lot of arguing.
Yeah, that doesn't sit well in their souls. They feel unsettled, and then they can begin to take sides. And so, then there's the danger of like you as a parent beginning to reveal information about your spouse to one of the kids, and that can just be really ugly. So if I'm prioritizing and loving, we're both doing the same, and we're number one, even when instead of the quality time with my kids, we need the quality time together. I think that begins to make them just feel relaxed.
Are you a stakeholder in the discipleship of the next generation? I mean, are you a parent, a grandparent, an aunt or an uncle, a youth worker, a youth pastor, a children's pastor, a children's worker, a homemaker, a homeschooler, a Christian educator? All of these different individuals are stakeholders in the lives of young people and have tremendous potential to influence them for the cause of Christ. However, we live in a culture that is filled with chaos and confusion, and it offers challenges to our young people on a daily basis. And so, as those stakeholders, we need to learn how we can effectively navigate this culture and then lead our kids to become salt and light in an increasingly secular, hostile culture. So don't miss the Maven conference on September 8th and 9th in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We are going to bring in some of the top speakers who will help you engage the Christian worldview and also engage the culture that we live in. You're going to get deep biblical truth that's going to be practical. You're going to walk away feeling equipped to help disciple the next generation. Go to mavenconferences.com for all the information.
Well, today we're back on the Maven Parent Podcast with Ryan and Katy Faust, pastor and president of Them Before Us, Katy, Ryan's pastor, and parents of 4 kids, college through junior high age, right? So last time we talked a lot about education and how you guys have come to that decision with your kids, how you've navigated it. And listeners, if you did not hear that episode, go back for sure and listen to that as they talk about how they've navigated school and different types of schooling with their kids. But today, Katy and Ryan, we wanted to talk to you guys about marriage, how to prioritize marriage. You have 4 kids. You've been through baby stage now to college. And so, of course, those stages with our kids are, and navigating, prioritizing marriage can be difficult at times. And so we wanted to get just some of your insight and wisdom on how you guys have, you're running a nonprofit, you're in church ministry, you're really active in your church, your kids are in public school, private school, you've done all these things. And both of you, interestingly enough, came from broken homes, from divorced homes. And so even in our last conversation, I noticed how both of you talked about, especially you, Ryan, well, I was reading this book, I was listening to this. And so I'd like to talk today about how you've even learned and grown as parents, because of course we have to be open and humble to keep learning as we go along. But let's start with maybe your guys' story a little bit. This is prompted because Katy, you I think posted on Facebook. It's probably, I think it was last Father's Day, or was it this Father's Day? But you were talking about Ryan, and you were talking about 7-year-old Ryan. And it was very interesting about being at his best friend's house, Chad's house, spending time a lot with his family. And Ryan, and just maybe you can relay the story, but standing there and having some pretty significant thoughts about Chad's family and how you wanted to do family.
Kate, Yeah. So my parents being divorced since I was 3, they would argue all the time. Well, that doesn't stop when you get divorced. So they're living in 2 different cities, and I'm living with my mom, and my dad would call me 3 days a week, and it's long distance at that time. So it costs a lot of money. So it's 15 minutes. So he'd have like 10 minutes with me. Hey, can you put your mom on? Because they have to talk about schedules of the next weekend. I would go visit him. And then they would just be yelling at each other. So it was interesting. Because not only that, but my mom getting married to her new husband, lots of arguing there. My dad getting married to his new wife, lots of arguing there. So like the realm that I grew up in was not healthy. And then I'd be at my best friend's house, and I would see, mom and dad that love each other. And the kids, while they don't always agree, siblings that cared about each other. So I just thought, the type of parenting, the type of, husband-wife relationship that his parents had, I really wanted. I just thought, I need to cut off what I have, and this is how I want my family to be.
And even as a 7-year-old, you said, when I grow up, my house is going to be like this house.
Sure. 8, 10 years old.
Okay, so wow. He met him when he was 7.
Okay, Katy. So what about you and your formation, thinking about becoming a parent one day? And were there families like Ryan had experience where you got to see kind of a picture of healthy, broken, not so functional?
Yeah, I had my best friend, her parents had a good marriage. And then I had an aunt and uncle, especially on my mom's side, that kind of took me under their wing, and I got to observe them. But I think that, we dated all 4 years in college and got married immediately afterwards. And then we actually moved to Taiwan for the first year of our marriage because I had a postgraduate scholarship there. And then we moved to Colorado when Ryan got his master's of divinity. And at kind of every stage, like when we were in college and dating, when we went to Taiwan, when we moved to Colorado, there was a couple or two at every church that discipled us on how to be married. And then once we had kids, there was a few parents that we could look, even before we had kids, we could look at them and say, oh, that's what that looks like. So I really feel like we were idiots when we got married in terms of like, we didn't know. We knew what we wanted to become, but we had not had that modeled for us. I do remember that Chad's dad said to you on our wedding day, he said, the best gift you'll ever give your children is to love their mother well. And Ryan has really strived to do that. Like, I think at different points of our 25-year marriage, sometimes I wake up earlier, sometimes he wakes up earlier. I bet in the last 25 years, there's only been maybe 5 times where he hasn't kissed me before he left the house. You think so?
Yeah, but you get up before me now, so I haven't done that in 6 months.
Well, okay, when he leaves first, like even if I'm dead asleep, even if I'm like, he'll find a surface area, to kiss. And, he's just never forgotten what Chad's dad said to him. But then in terms of
it was more like, you want to show your children the love of God, show them by how you love your wife.
Yeah. And he's really lived that, like our children would all say, oh my gosh, dad is head over heels for mom, like they would all say that. But in terms of working that out, I think especially for me, what does being a godly wife look like? I needed women to literally say, hey, Katy, do you see how you did that? Don't ever do that again. Like I needed very specific instruction on what being a biblical wife looked like, not a doormat that just is like, yes, honey, yes, honey, yes, honey, yes, honey, but not a person who's trying to wrestle control on every issue. And what does respect look like? So I just feel like
the first year we were married, I had to not say, hey, this is how Chad's mom did it. Right?
Oh my God.
Because, hey, you're a different person. So,
but that was his model for what marriage looked like. So there was some growth in terms of you can have healthy marriages that don't cookie cutters look exactly like Chad's family. So I'd just say that like we are at our 25th year, probably as close as we've ever been, because in the early years, the church discipled us.
Yeah, and a lot of intentional work.
And a lot of intentional work.
Yeah. Well, when we were,
And he still has his looks, which helps.
Okay, so talk about even the idea that the marriage, what you said Chad's dad said to you, Ryan, about if you want to show your kids love of God, you love your wife, which it's just, I just don't think that's a message that is really promoted today. There's kind of a mix up of how we prioritize our home and our children. There's a lot of child-centric homes, and people sometimes don't understand why that's not healthy. And I know you guys advocate, not only in your book, Katy, Them Before Us, just how important it is to prioritize marriage for ourselves, but also for our children, and how foundational that is. So maybe talk to us a little bit about how you've learned to do that along the way, and the fruit that you've seen of that.
So I was challenged, I don't remember at what point, but what are your priorities? So loving God is number one, loving your wife is number two, then your family, and then job.
Then your church.
Well,
right.
Job and church, anyway, that depends, because my church is my job.
Well,
anyway.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Somebody had to say your church is not first. Your church, your job.
Providing for your family comes before that, but church is really important.
Yeah.
But I think loving God being number one. So if you think of leave and cleave, right? Tim Keller helped us to understand this. He has a great marriage series that he and his wife did. But, making her the number one priority in my life, even over my kids, and her doing the same for me. And, leaving your parents, cleaving to your spouse. A lot of times, a spouse will share intimate details with their parent in relation to husband and wife. And that can create a lot of tension there because they're making their parents still a priority, or their number one confidant, or parents maybe not feeling like they get the love from their spouse that they should be in terms of, time or whatever, however that person seeks love. Mm-hmm. And so then they seek that from their children. And so I really like his illustration of, what is love? With your kids, they can't even really love you back when they're young. They spit up all over the place, make messes, bite you, whatever. Yes. And then as they get older, there's times when they just don't like you at all, especially as a teenager, and want nothing to do with you. And you keep loving them and serving them because it's agape love. And meanwhile, the relationship between husband and wife is kind of going like this, because I think having more and more children, you find it more and more difficult for husband and wife to get time together. So you're spending this time serving your kids. So while you're feeling distant and lack of love with your spouse, you're putting in a lot of time of doing actions of love for your kids, even though they're not responding with the same type of action. And by the time
they're not made to be your counterpart and your partner the way your husband or wife is, right?
No, but the point of what I'm saying is a parent can really feel close to their kid because they're doing Christ-like love.
Right.
But they don't feel close to their spouse because they think of it more along the lines of romance. So I don't have the same kind of romance that I once had with my wife. Therefore, I don't really want to be around her. I don't want to spend time with her. I don't want to serve her. I don't want to do things for her. But yet you're doing things to serve your kids.
Right.
And so take all the energy that you would put into serving your kids, you got to put that into serving your wife, and vice versa. And I think that's intentionally building into your spouse in the ways that they need to be built into for a long-lasting relationship. So the 5 love languages, we are opposites. I mean, she's all about acts of service and I'm all about quality time. And so when we're not spending quality time, or, there's not a lot of words of affirmation, I feel hurt, right? And when she feels like I'm not doing the dishes or not helping out around the house, she feels like I don't love her. So I have to figure out how to speak her love language, which means I need to die to myself, do the dishes, right? And even though she feels like words are cheap, learning how to speak my love language. So learning to do that. And that's hard because I think God, opposites attract. So I think God brings two different people together, but it's ultimately for your sanctification. So you become more Christ-like by learning to love how the other person needs it.
Yeah, Erin and I have actually added a sixth love language. That's the love language of sarcasm. And we're it's the same attract here. So our listeners will know that for sure.
I think any listener will know we are both sarcastic, but you're like off the charts.
Are you being sarcastic right now? Or is that literal? We're supposed to take that literal?
I'm actually being literal right now, but
okay.
It is a love language in our family.
It is. I love you very much. So I think what you're saying, Ryan, is really important for couples to consider, because there can be this can be a slow process where you slowly drift from the spouse. And then there's almost a kind of putting too much then investment. That's not the right word I'm looking for, but you end up looking to your child for more of the affirmation or the love, or as you're not, whatever the coldness is developing between you and the spouse, and then you shift to the kid, and then there's an unhealthy relationship that can be developed with the kids. And so I'm just saying that because I think couples need to consider that, and if they're seeing that, probably what's not happening then is the work that needs to be put into the marriage relationship. And so that might be something for moms and dads to really consider, like, hey, there's been this drift. Okay, we've got to course correct, because this trajectory can be disastrous. So
let me jump in there and say, we've been married 25 years. We have had seasons of drift. And that's because that is what happens when you try to live life together for 25 years. And that involves a lot of change. Like in a lot of ways, he's the same guy and I'm the same girl. And in a lot of ways, he's a different guy and I'm a different girl. And so you have to grow and figure out, like, what does this prioritization of marriage look like with you in this new season of life, or with you in these new priorities, or whatever it is. So what do you do with the drift? Number one, we went through an intense, like, week-long kind of marriage diagnostic, and it was painful and helpful, right? Where we could see, where are we out of alignment? Number two, we always have a standing date every Friday morning. Ryan, it's supposedly his day off, which means he takes a couple hours off. And, but I don't schedule anything Friday morning, and we always walk. We always have the same route. We take the dogs, we go get coffee, we sit on a bench, we come home, it's about a 2-hour trek. And so once a week, we always have a time where we say something to one another other than, put the chicken in the oven. I'm going to be home in a half an hour. And when I get back, I just need to make sure that the kitchen is clean, because everyone's going to be here at around 6:30. And by the way, Miriam's going to take the car because the other car isn't working right now. So I just want to make sure, like, I'm going to throw something in the laundry. And after that, we're going to be totally okay. All right, I'll see you. No, wait, no, give me the key. Okay, bye. Right. So you need to have time where, especially when your kids are in the, when you're in the exhaustion phase when they're young, the busy phase when they're teens, where you have dedicated time to say, so Ryan's line, how does your soul prosper? Or, I can say, oh, so what's new in your world, or whatever it is. So number three, I will say, if you're feeling the drift, you create emotional intimacy with whoever you're sharing emotional information with. So think about who's getting your emotional information. And you can create emotional intimacy with anybody that you're telling your greatest hopes, fears, longings, desires, excitement with. And you can sow seeds of intimacy with your coworker, your opposite sex coworker. If that is the place where you're putting, all of your big emotional information, or
your friend that you work out with.
Or your, you can even do that with your friends, like create more emotional intimacy. And I'm not saying that it's sexual, but I'm saying that it's deep emotional reliance with whoever's getting your emotional information. So during our years of drift, that was an area that I had to correct. I was not giving Ryan first shot at my emotional information, right? And so I had to redirect myself to say, oh, here's something exciting that's happened. And instead of texting my friend, I would text Ryan about it, or I'd hold it and I'd wait until he got home and I'd say, here's something I'm really excited about. Like give him first crack at the emotional information. So you can, if you're feeling that drift or you just want to strengthen your relationship, think about where you're putting your emotional information. And if you're putting your emotional information with somebody who is not your spouse, just be aware that, especially if it's with somebody of the opposite sex, emotional intimacy very quickly can become sexual intimacy. So you really do need to guard where you're putting your emotional information.
Yeah. And I would say, here I am saying, let me be a safe harbor where you can share this information. And then the information would be shared and I wouldn't be safe because there would be criticism, or I wanted to talk about something else. So she didn't feel like she could really share. So I think that another Tim Keller thing, be the first person to realize that you are the problem in the relationship and what your spouse is saying is true because they know you better than anyone else. So I remember when we first started listening to these Keller sermon podcasts, I was like, my wife needs to hear that, I'm going to start this right in the middle of this one podcast, right exactly at the place she needs to hear it right when she's done brushing her teeth so that we can fall asleep listening to this. And hopefully she'll learn something. That's what I was thinking for 6 months. And then 6 months later, I realized, holy cow, I'm the Lord, And so then just walking in repentance. And then I think you probably had a similar experience.
There was repentance on my part.
Mm-hmm. Can you guys connect for a listener who's maybe they're in a hard marriage spot right now, and or maybe they're not, but just connect why it is actually loving to our kids to prioritize each other. How does that? So a busy week, and you have your Friday morning coming up, but you haven't connected with one of the kids, or one of the kids is having a hard time. But we would argue, and I think you guys would argue too, that actually doing your Friday walk or your date night or whatever it is should still be the priority. Connect for a listener who's like, I don't get how that's actually. They get the down the road divorce isn't great for kids, but how does this really love our kids?
I think kids feel stable when they see their parents loving each other. And so if the time that we're spending together is arguing and they're listening through the vents.
They've heard plenty of arguing, by the way. Mm-hmm. Our kids have heard a lot of arguing.
Yeah, that doesn't sit well in their souls. They feel unsettled, and then they can begin to take sides. And so, then there's the danger of you as a parent beginning to reveal information about your spouse to one of the kids, and that can just be really ugly. So if I'm prioritizing and loving, we're both doing the same, and we're number one, even when it, instead of the quality time with my kids, we need the quality time together. I think that begins to make them just feel relaxed.
Well, and you've built in
a sense of ease.
I think, Ryan, we're still in schedule-wise quality time with the kids, and I find the quality time wherever I can. So they're getting time with both of us. It's just never at the expense of our standard time. And it's not like Ryan and I get tons of time together, quality time. We just make sure we get it at least once a week. But I'll say...
But I think that they can sense if we're getting that quality time.
Yeah.
Just by,
that it'll be lighthearted or it'll be cold-hearted. They can figure it out. Yeah. I will say that it's funny because sometimes our song will come on and we have this gigantic...
Sometimes I think you do that on purpose.
Well, sometimes I'll switch channels if needed. But I just want to say 2 Christmases ago, I asked for a subwoofer in my van because
It's like a football.
Well, you didn't get me a subwoofer. They got me this giant speaker, which is fine, but it doesn't bump
anywhere
like I wanted it to. So anyway, it is now in the kitchen, and sometimes our song will come on and Ryan will appear. You don't even know he's home, but he hears the song. I'm in the kitchen doing dishes because I'm always doing dishes. And he will just appear and we'll drop everything and we dance. And, you know, for the longest time, the kids would be like, yes. Oh, here they go again.
Yes.
Right?
Recently, this song has come on, so I think it's intentional.
We figured out Pandora a little bit better, but it's so funny because, you know, the kids, I think they can pretend like they don't like it, but they love it. You know, they love to see the two people they love the most loving each other. And it gives them a sense of, like Ryan said, security. And then, of course, our jokester 15-year-old will like find and gather up the fluffy cat, and he'll just do the cheek to cheek right next to us with the cat. And, you know, it's good, right? And but it's not something that that is a symptom, right, of a healthy relationship. So, you know, it's great to
we have
prioritize
to know
the marriage.
what the song
I was just
is.
about to say, everyone who's listening right now is asking one
What is the
question.
song?
What is this song? Do you
Well,
share
we
that,
kinda
or
have
is
two
that?
of them.
We got like three.
Okay.
There's a top three.
In Your Eyes.
In Your Eyes, which is everybody's song who graduated from high school in the 90s.
That's right.
And then When We Dance, which is probably the real song. We just don't hear it as much.
Yeah, it's got a line in there that she sang to me when I think we were freshmen.
I think I whispered in his ear, and it was, come and live with me. We'll have children of our own. I will love you more than life if you'd only be my wife, right? So
when she whispered that in my ear as a freshman, I was like, could this be the one?
what? And then there's definitely some magic with Salisbury Hill as well.
I don't know if that's
thanks for sharing.
That's a good.
It's a top song. We would stop for that song. Okay.
Yeah, I love the especially the part about the kids reacting, because our kids do that same thing if we start hugging or kissing in the kitchen, or you know, or Brett will say, "Oh, Mom, you look so beautiful," and you know, anything. They're like, "Oh my gosh, Dad," you know, or whatever. But there's something about that you just, as a kid, you just love that, because, like you said, Katie, the people you love the most, you see them loving each other, and like you said, Ryan, there's something about that with kids that just. It just brings about a peace. And I'm curious, you know, we know we have listeners who are co-parenting, who are divorced or never were married, or single parenting. And I don't want to leave them out of this conversation. And I'm thinking about how can they, of course, they're not married to their child's mother or father, but do you have any encouragement of that, of even you? I mean, you both mentioned hearing your parents fight and how upsetting that was to you. So I wonder if you have just some encouragement for a single parent of how they can nurture this in their kid.
I think the worst thing that a parent can do, like in that divorce situation, is speak to their kid about how awful the other person is, because it trains the kid, you know, to gossip and throw the other parent under the bus, and
it wounds you because you love that parent,
right, and then you feel like you have to defend that other parent, you know, and so just don't do that. If the other parent's doing that, take the high road. Like, prove by your actions that that's not true about you.
And two, where there's all kinds of people in non-ideal situations who are not there because they chose it. You know, a lot of people that are single parents because they were the only parent willing to act like an adult. And, you know, a lot of these situations come about through no fault of the parent's own. And I think that it's okay to acknowledge you've lost something here. You deserve to have your dad in the house with me, loving me all the time. You deserve to have him reform his life, quit drinking, you know, choose to do the hard thing, grow up, be mature so that you could enjoy your mom and dad here. And I'm so sorry you don't have that right now, right? You can say that without throwing the other parent under the bus. You can say, you deserve this. I'm sorry you don't have it. But you can put your finger on the source of the pain and say, it's okay to feel that way. I think a lot of the times, you know, we say, well, we don't want to bring that up because we don't want the kid to feel bad. The kid knows it, right? The kid is sad. The kid understands that this is hard to, you know, drive between mom and dad's house, midweek. And it's okay to say, I'm sorry you're in this situation. And if there's fault on your part, you can say, some of that was my fault. I wasn't the person that I should have been back then, and I should have made different decisions. Just free your kid up to be able to be honest with you if they do feel a sense of loss or a sense of sadness. Like, be the safe place where your kid can talk, that your kid can put that.
I want to jump back. I want to ask a real practical question because, you talked about this Friday morning routine. This is so important, this idea of weekly time together alone. I'm curious, how did you guys decide to choose to walk together, go have coffee, walk the dog, sit? Is it something like, hey, we both just love taking walks? How did you figure out what it is you like to do? Because I'm just thinking about, parents out there who are maybe have different interests, and how do you figure out what we do together?
It was because we were poor. Like, we started this when Ryan was an associate pastor at our previous church, and we had no money. We were like, and
we would walk together with our kids to Starbucks when we lived in Spokane.
And we would get a grande drip in a venti cup. And back then they had free refills. So we would get one. It was like $1.95. And then we would just sit in Starbucks and we'd get like 3 free refills. And like half of it was cream and sugar, right? So, and then we'd split it. So
and we used to go play cards too.
We're all just been card players because it's free. We totally play cards. He just doesn't.
I thought you guys were. I thought you were Baptists.
I know.
You're not allowed to do that.
Right. That's true.
Good thing there's no money.
We're breaking all the rules. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually, when we were engaged in 1996, walking around Hong Kong.
Yeah.
That's when we really kind of experienced that. And then when we lived in Taiwan, we did that all the time. Because, you can't really afford to go everywhere. Like, take a bus, or you have to walk a ways to get wherever you're going.
But the other thing, too, is when we moved to Seattle, Ryan felt really strongly that we would live in the neighborhood that we were ministering, and we would walk so that we could.
There's a missional component to it. It's the same time, same day. You see people all the time, same people, and then you have conversations. So that has opened up opportunities.
And having good-looking, friendly dogs is awesome. It's like the biggest evangelistic tool ever, right?
Yeah, you want people to talk to you.
The dogs break the ice. That's right.
They got to be pretty.
They got to be, non-aggressive for sure.
Don't walk your pit bull.
Don't walk your pit bull.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said about it, the missional component, because we just did a podcast, 2 months ago, about couples and families coming together or developing closeness and intimacy through serving together, and how that can be just such glue in the family. So,
Well, Katy and Ryan, thank you so much for. We could just keep talking on and on, but we appreciate your time and just your humbleness in sharing how you guys have figured things out. It just is so helpful and encouraging to hear from other people on how they've figured it out, as ever imperfectly as it looks. So we appreciate your time and your wisdom, and God bless you guys in your 25 years of marriage and beyond, and your 4 kids. And thanks for coming on the Maven Parent Podcast.
Yay.
Thanks for having us.
Maven exists to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty for the cause of Christ. To find out more, check out maventruth.com.